In 2004, I took my first journey to India. It was something I've been looking forward to doing since I was a young man, actually about age 8 or 9, when I read the book Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And in that book, he talks about his childhood growing up in India. He talks about all these saintly people that he met. In one particular chapter, he talks about a yogi named Larry Masha, who traveled, was summoned actually to the Himalayan mountains to this cave where he met this great avatar Babaji and was given this lost secret technique of Kriya Yoga. And it was a great inspiring chapter. And I always said to myself, I'd like to go to that cave, find it. So in the fall of 2004, along with a friend, I traveled from California all the way to India, found myself in the Himalayas, and with a great deal of effort, I found the location of the ashram in India that looks after this cave, the guardians of the cave. It's a YSS group, part of Self-Realization Fellowship in India, and they actually guard the cave. They got lock on it, and a door, and they got a temple up there, and it's in a location that's not advertised, nor are there any signage or anything else how to get there. And to go there, you need permission from the people at the ashram, from the swamis. So after a very long trip, trying to even figure out how to get to this ashram, which we finally found, we got there, and the swami, I told him what I wanted, and he said, well, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later. And so I hung around the ashram for a few days, and it was cold. It was in October, but it was cold, very cold, and I was sleeping in the ashram, and it was a wooden bed, no mattress, with a lot of blankets and no window panes. It was a screen opened, and it was probably about 28, 30 degrees inside each night when I was sleeping. It felt great. It was invigorating. Got up in the morning, and there was an ice cold bucket of water there for me to bathe. And then I'd have a breakfast of rice and potatoes and whatever other vegetables were laying around. And I'd meditate during the day. And so finally, I went to the Swami, and I said, okay, I really want to go to see this Babaji's cave. And I told him how sincere I was, and he asked me about my practice of Kriya Yoga, my meditation, and I told him about my involvement with the Self-Realization Fellowship since 1946, and that I was doing the Kriya Yoga, and so, okay. And he said, all right. But he says, everybody's going to be leaving the ashram. They're all going to Ranchi for a convocation, and nobody will be here in a few days, and I'm the last one. That's what he said. He was the last one there, and he was leaving. And so I could go, but only if I could guide myself there, because all the guides they had were gone. They weren't available. And apparently it was almost impossible to find this cave without it. So he asked me, he says, hey, if I give you directions, can you find it? And of course, I'm going to find this cave. I mean, I've traveled thousands of miles. I'm going to find the cave. So I said, yeah. So he took this piece of paper, and he took a pen, and he chicken scratched a bunch of lines. If you go here, you go down the road about 40 minutes, maybe 50 minutes to an hour, and you stop. You go on the side road, and there's a little dirt path. You go down that, and there's a bunch of trails, but take the one that looks like it's the most used, and don't be confused by when you come to a crossroads. Go uphill. Anyway, the directions were just all over the place. And we said, yeah, we're going to try to find it. And he gave me the keys to get into the temple. There was a Babaji temple there. It was locked up. And keys to get into the cave itself. And instructions were to be back by 5:30 that evening, because he locked up the ashram gate, and I wouldn't be allowed back in, and therefore our clothes and everything, our backpacks will all be inside locked in. So I said, yes, be back by 5:30. I said, okay. So we start off down the road, and we drove 45, 50 minutes. I don't know, I just said, pull over. We pulled over, and the driver went to sleep at the wheel and said he'd wait for us. And me and my buddy Dave, we got out, and we started walking. We walked down this wooden area, all these trees and stuff, and there was pathways all over the place. And so we looked for one that looked like it was kind of more trodden than the others. We got on that, and then there was some signage. There was an arrow, but it was pointing straight up instead of left or right. And there was 3 possible trails, and so we chose one at random. We kept going. We were traveling about 3-4 hours uphill in a hot sun, and I was getting dehydrated. We didn't bring any water. We didn't bring any food. We didn't bring any jackets. We didn't bring anything other than I had a hat on and a pair of sandals and a pair of Levi's, and we were going up this hill. And when I got there, I'd been struggling with dysentery, something I ate or drank, and so it was causing me some real major problems. I'd lost 26 pounds in 3 weeks in India, and so I was not in a great shape going up the hill. So I had that problem as I was going up the hill, and then I also got into some of the bushes, and there was something kind of like poison ivy, poison oak. I don't know what it was, but it was indigenous to India, and I had these rash all over my body as I was sweating. And I was dealing with a heart. I had a heart problem, which later became even worse. And I was still dealing with seizures that I was having from Vietnam, from getting injured, blown up in Vietnam and having a head injury. I had to get these seizures periodically. And so that was causing me to be lightheaded and everything else. So we're traveling and traveling. Finally, we see something at the top of this hill, and we go up there, and there's this temple. It's Babaji's temple. We all go open up the lock, get inside. I'm totally exhausted. I'm sweating so bad that all of a sudden I realize I'm not sweating anymore at all. I'm dry. There's no sweat coming out, which is not a good sign. So we meditated a while and rested, and then we got out of the temple and we went the last couple 100 yards, which is pretty much straight uphill, and we found the cave. It's Babaji's cave. This is a sacred place that devotees from around the world go to. It's got a special feel, special vibration, and historically it's very historically it's huge for those that follow Kriya Yoga. So I had all these feelings pent up inside of me, and I got inside the cave. I sat down. It was just me and him. We were all alone, and I meditated. It was a beautiful thing. And when we got through meditating, I took these papers out of my pocket. I had written down before I left for India on my computer, and I typed up hundreds and hundreds of names, maybe over 1,000 or two, of everybody in my life I could think of, from childhood, school, college, military, organizations I belonged to, family, friends, enemies, old bosses, good people, bad people, all kinds of people. I figured I was going to take them all with me to all these sacred places I was going in, and I would silently read their names and get them blessed. So even though all these people couldn't go on the journey with me, I wanted them to receive the blessings of the journey that I was feeling and experiencing. So I took it out and I read through all the names, asking God to bless them all and Babaji to bless them all, and I tucked it back in my pocket. Now later on, as a side note, I was in the Ganges River at sunrise in Varanasi, and I took that list out as the sun was coming up, and I read the names. And then I took a match and I torched it. I set it on fire and let it burn to ashes. Then I dropped the last ashes into the Ganges at sunrise. And so all those people I prayed for on the list, I did this ritual at many temples and at all these sacred places, and then I burned the list at the Ganges River and let it float down the river. So that's the side note on that. Meanwhile, I'm in there, I'm meditating, and my heart is just pounding really bad. It feels like an elephant sitting on my chest. I'm not feeling good at all, and I'm dizzy. We finish the meditations. We lock up the cave. We lock up the temple, and my friend goes, "Well, take us back." I don't know where I'm going. I'm totally out of it. I'm dizzy and everything else. So I start walking. We're walking for hours. We realize that we're not heading back to where we started. In fact, we're totally lost, going the wrong direction. And I'm standing on this cliff. It's about a 30-foot cliff. Now, it's not straight down. It's kind of angled. And I say that because I got really dizzy. My chest was just killing me. And all of a sudden, it was just so painful in my chest. I keeled over and I fell off this 30-foot cliff. And luckily, I bounced at least twice. Boom, boom, 10 feet, 10 feet, and then 10 feet onto a rock. And I landed there on the rock, laying facing the sky up above me, blue sky. And my heart was just killing me. And then all of a sudden, there was no pain. There was no sounds. There was just this light of the sky, just bright. The next thing you know, I'm looking down at my body laying on top of this big boulder below this cliff. And my body is lifeless. There's no pulse, there's no breathing, there's no activity. It's just laying there. And I'm thinking, well, okay, if I'm going to die, this is good. I got to see Babaji's cave. I got to go to India. All's good and well. And I'm up there and I'm looking down and there's this cobra snake, with the hood and everything. And it comes crawling across my shoes. And I look down at it and I get excited. I just get excited. And all of a sudden I realize I'm back in my body and I'm jumping up. It's like somebody took two paddles and went, clear, chink, and electrocuted my heart and got it back up again. All of a sudden I took a deep breath and started breathing. And I was breathing in my pulse. I was awake again. I was standing up. My friend's looking at me from the top of the cliff going, what's going on? And then I tried grabbing this cobra. It slips through my hands and I'm grabbing it and grabbing it. I'm chasing this cobra down this little path until it comes to this little waterfall, about an 8-9 foot waterfall. And it slithers in behind the waterfall. And I'm looking at the waterfall and I'm going, huh. I can remember in the autobiography, in the book, where it talks about Larry Masha, after he had his wonderful experience with Babaji and all this stuff, he went down to wash up and rest next to this creek with a waterfall. And I thought, for some reason, the thought occurred to me that maybe this was that long-lost waterfall. Anyway, so I finally realized I wasn't going to get the snake. It was long gone, and that was a stupid idea. My buddy got down the cliff, and he decided he was going to follow the path of the water down. That would take us down to the valley, and we'd find some way to get back to our vehicle. We finally found a farm. Kids took us to our car that we met their driver, who woke him up, said we had to get back because we spent the whole entire day there, and it was getting very close to the gate being closed. By the time we got back to the ashram, the Swami was actually standing outside with big keys, getting ready to lock and close up the door to the ashram. And we pull up in the vehicle. And he just smiled. He said, how was your trip? And so I proceeded to tell him, hey, look, I had a heart attack, fell off a cliff, I was having seizures, I got dehydrated, I got hives all over my body from whatever plant was out there, I had diarrhea, I had exhaustion, I had bumps and bruises, scratches, torn shirt, and I was just a mess. And so I'm telling this whole story. And there's this woman, it turns out she's from Alaska, a woman about 40 or 50 years old. She's going, hey, mister, don't you know? And she kept interfering. I finally said, what don't I know? She says, don't you know that those that go to Babaji's cave and have the most arduous journey have the greatest blessing? And the Swami kind of smiled at me and walked away. And I stood there looking at her and I'm going, yeah, I don't know how many people have been to Babaji's cave, fallen off a cliff, have a near-death experience, had a cobra encounter, and had all that happened to them that happened to me. And all of a sudden I felt this banged, beat-up body feeling wonderful. And even though I was chilled in the cold night air, by then it all felt right. I finally got to go to Babaji's cave and truly experience it. And I recommend to anybody, if you've read the book Autobiography of Yogi, go. But get a guide and do it right. I don't necessarily advise doing it the way I did it. But it was a life experience, and it could have been a lifetime experience.